106.1 Next Radio, your radio for the big hits. And my name is Hakim Wampambe. Very good evening to you, and thank you so much for keeping it locked onto 106.1 Next Radio and sitting in for my colleague Kanari Mugume that hasn't been able to do it today. And well, what a way to kickstart off an evening than speaking about the Ugandan real estate sector, with discussions spanning within the confines of Kampala is now too overcrowded, and there is perhaps need for us to look onto cities that are far away from Kampala to perhaps get to reimagine the semblance of what a capital city would look like, but also trying to recalibrate and change the post relating to the Ugandan real estate sector and how we can build what looks more like a capital city. And what a way for us to be able to have this discussion than having an acclaimed person within the Ugandan real estate sector, someone that everything that I know about real estate in Uganda, at least Knight Frank has been part of the way. I've either read reports, I've either interviewed Judy Rugasera, is the managing director at Knight Frank. Judy, we're very, very happy and humble to host you today.
Thank you very much, Hakim, and it's a pleasure for me to be here.
Certainly. Let us speak about this discussion about the Ugandan real estate sector and the need to perhaps relocate the city into further cities, and particularly Mbarara or Western Uganda. Let us have the discussion. I've been reading about REDi, and that is a big project in my own view, but now we at least have the privilege to hear it from you for the very first time and to get it from an authoritative source as such as you. What is REDi and what is it intending to bring onto the Ugandan real estate sector and perhaps to reorganize the country? Perhaps also looking at leveraging much that we can get from the Ugandan real estate sector.
Thank you very much, Hakim. Good evening, listeners. So REDi, which is spelled REDi, stands for the Real Estate Development and Investment Summit. And what it is basically is a Knight Frank Uganda initiative which is focused on unlocking the economic and investment potential of Uganda's secondary cities. And what we do is we bring together government, city leaders, investors, financiers, developers, and major local institutions to examine each city's opportunities. And then we identify what is holding investment back and agree on practical actions of how to unlock that investment potential. So it's not simply a real estate conference. It's not your traditional conferences that you hear about or that you see, but it's intended to create a pathway from market intelligence, which is anchored by the research reports that we do. I'm sure you've read the ones that we do in Kampala. We go into the city, we do a market mapping of that city, write quite an extensive and deep dive on the market that we are hosting the conference in this case it's in Mbarara, and we then create a pathway. The research is intended to create a pathway from market intelligence to commitments and ultimately to investments.
Okay, so it is not just a traditional conference as I've known them to be, that we call upon developers, brokers, among others to come, let's sit in the room and discuss this thing. So
No,
it's different.
It isn't. It's very different.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. What does the problem? I mean, what was the problem that made you look and decide and say, you know what, Uganda really needs something like this? Are we too badly off in terms of planning for our cities, in terms of mapping and reimagining what we could hold for cities that are way, outside the capital?
Thank you. I would say Uganda's economic activity, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, and the investments remain heavily concentrated in Kampala. So, and yet some of our fastest growing opportunities are emerging outside of Kampala, outside of the capital. So Mbarara, Gulu, Hoima, Arua, Mbale, to name but a few of the 10 secondary cities, are expanding quite rapidly. But investment is often fragmented. It's not guided by a shared economic vision. So we created REDi to bring the right people into one room and ask, what does this city need to become investable and competitive and more productive, and who must do what to make this happen.
Okay.
So that's really what we identified as the missing gap and what we're trying to solve for.
It looks like it's going to be a continuous campaign. It looks like it's something that is really going to be continuous and not a one-off. Why is it a series, of conferences, or why is it a series of, initiatives rather than just a report or a campaign or just a one-off event?
That's a very good question. We write very many reports for very many reasons. But a report, whilst it can identify an opportunity, it cannot bring government, capital, or developers together to act on it. Okay. A one-off event like a conference can create excitement, but it will not sustain momentum. So REDi is a series because we realize that regional transformation takes time. We begin with the research, as I've already told you. We convene the decision makers together under one room. We document the commitments, and then we track progress. And each city is a lesson learned, and it enables us to plan, more appropriately for the city that is going to come after that, and it informs us as to what we can do thereafter.
Okay, I'm looking at a couple of secondary cities. Recently, the discussion that was being held was, you see, Nakasongola, I think, is virgin and ready for investment and to be developed, perhaps to a city status, perhaps substituting Kampala. Why are we specifically looking at Mbarara in particular? Why and why at this very particular moment?
Mbarara has already been identified as one of the secondary cities, or gazetted as one of the 10 secondary cities, and it's already an economic gateway to Western Uganda and the Great Lakes region. Okay. It already has a strong agricultural base. It has growing businesses. It has reputable universities and hospitals. It has growing hospitality and retail sectors. I'm sure you've seen as you drive into Mbarara, there's so many developments that are coming up. There are new shopping centers that are coming up. There's now an airport that is being talked
in
of.
Yachara.
Yes, and it has many important regional trade links. So we realize that its growth now needs to become more deliberate, more coordinated. And the decisions made today will determine whether Mbarara actually develops merely as a larger town or emerges as a genuinely competitive regional economic hub.
Certainly, and one would want to look back at the theme and what it weaves together, and that very theme and the light that it carries with it into the broader discussion of REDi. What does the theme look like, and a little more specifically, you're mentioning building Mbarara as the next economic hub. What does Mbarara have to do to ensure that all this is possible, or the policy makers in there, and what are some of the things that are really going to underpin the success of such a conference of REDi?
Yes, so we've themed it as Uganda's next economic hub. Reason being that Mbarara already has location, it has enterprise, and it has an established economic base. Okay. So it sits within one of Uganda's most productive agricultural regions, and serves Western Uganda and beyond, Ankole region, to be more precise. And it also extends into the neighboring markets. So we realize that it already has strong education, healthcare, tourism, hospitality, manufacturing, and trade sectors. So the opportunity is to connect these strengths through better infrastructure, logistics, investment, patient finance, industrial development, and urban planning. So we realize that now is really the time for Mbarara at this specific time to take the conference series there. Okay,
is it the real estate? Is real estate really the main driver here, or it is more about secondary cities themselves? Or we're speaking about just real estate being the anchor or the fuel for the new cities or the secondary cities that we are speaking about?
Our main focus at this moment is economic growth in the secondary cities. Okay. But real estate is the physical platform that enables that growth. Okay. Manufacturing needs industrial premises. Trade needs warehouses and logistics. Facilities like hospitality, hotels for tourism are required. Institutions need student and staff accommodation. There's about 4 universities in Mbarara right now. They need good quality, or an improvement on the student accommodation that they have right now. For example, businesses which are growing will need offices, will need housing, will need and as the population grows, they'll also need retail facilities. So real estate does not create the economy on its own. But an economy cannot function or scale without the built environment either.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the form of ecosystem that you're creating is already is looking at creation of an ecosystem through which economic development can certainly thrive.
Absolutely.
Certainly.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to ensure that is very, very clear out there.
Yeah.
But then when you go still around the same, what are some of the biggest obstacles that are standing between Mbarara's main current growth and it is becoming a really competitive investment destination? What are some of the things that are standing in between Mbarara and development? Because having been there in Western Uganda for some time, I can know that some things are really systemic, others are a little structural. In your view, what is that single most obstacle that REDi is seeking to also tackle while it pushes forward the development and the growth of real estate to perhaps push Mbarara and Western Uganda ultimately to the next level?
Thanks, Hakim. So the major constraints are gaps really in infrastructure, serviced and properly planned land. I would also say access to affordable long-term finance. I would also say another gap or another constraint would be reliable market information. You go into the market and you want to know what's happening, but there really isn't a database or a central point that you can go and get this information. Coordination between public and private sectors is also quite weak and missing. And yet you find that investors really need clarity and predictability, and they need to see clear planning frameworks. They need to know that there's efficient approvals in the city. They need to see a clear and visible pipeline of viable opportunities that will attract them into that city. So Mbarara does not lack potential as such, but the challenge is converting that potential into bankable and investable projects. And from are we see, is this synonymous to only Mbarara, or it is synonymous to other cities as well? No, it's a common thread across many of the cities that we're visiting or that we've visited. Yes.
And you just want to use this perhaps one as a pilot, or you want to use this as a launch pad to even take this initiative to other secondary cities a little later, not for this particular one?
Yes, we are definitely. The plan is to roll out the REDi conference series across the 10 secondary cities. So we started off with Gulu, which was the proof of concept, and that went extremely well. It was very successful. We created a pipeline of opportunities, some of which have already been actualized. And I can say there was about 50 or 60 million worth of investment deals in that room, potential deals that could be written. So that was our proof of concept. We did that already. We're now moving to Mbarara on Friday, and after that will be Hoima. And it looks like you have you're going to be on the run across the entire thread of the 10 cities that secondary cities that were approved. And as we go in to take a break, who will be in the room and what are some of the things that we do expect to be discussed at the conference, and what are some of the changes that you will certainly be looking at, and who gets a seat at the table at REDi, and why does that mix of the people really matter? So REDi brings together, as I alluded to earlier, central and local government, financiers, developers, investors, landowners, manufacturers, universities, hospitals, infrastructure providers, and also major other companies and employers. So that mix is deliberate. It is it's a conference that is for invited guests and maybe a few other delegates. We reserve a few slots for paying delegates. And the mix is deliberate because we realize that no single institution can transform a city. Government may provide policy and infrastructure, banks provide capital, developers deliver projects, but the local institutions create the demand. And progress occurs when those parties understand one another's requirements instead of working in silos and begin working from a shared agenda. So the platform that brings those people together in one room is really there to create the synergies and the networks amongst the different stakeholders in the room to be able to, to bring this transformation and make it come to life.
Okay. Yeah. And that is why I find the mix very, very interesting. If you are finding local government and with its district planning board and all these developers in here, and then the banks, some of the circles that are really having a lot of money in this country, Moshanga and others will be there in the room to bring forward what they can bring forward best. And I think it is something that I find exciting. Let us take a very short break and return with a discussion on what we think is going to be done at that very conference, and some of the things that we do expect to come out as nuances to this particular conference, and perhaps reimagining what the real estate sector can do in terms of development of the country, plus ensuring that everything is moving the right direction that it really needs to move in the country, and of course leveraging real estate as an anchor for economic development in the country. We take a very short break and return. This is the Big Talk.
Big Talk, hosted by Kanare Mugume, brought to you by.
Applying for your NSSF benefits is completely free. Submit your benefits claim application at any of the NSSF branches countrywide, or use the NSSF Go app or web.
6.1 Next Radio, and in studio with us is Judy Rugasira, Managing Director at Knight Frank, the country's leading, I should say, consultancy firm, property managers, and etc. Every information that you need regarding regarding the Ugandan real estate sector, you can certainly find with Knight Frank. So you can go read the quarterly reports, the half-year reports for the Ugandan real estate sector. You will definitely find all that in one place at Knight Frank. And before we went in for the break, Judy, we're still discussing Mbarara and the REDi conference that is and REDi that is soon happening in Mbarara. I know for a fact that what happens at such platforms are commitments from local government, from the developers, from the financiers, to everyone in the room. What are you going to do to ensure that these commitments are lived up to? Because some days commitments are made at such platforms and they are never come to fruition. So what will you do in extra to ensure that the commitments made perhaps turn into physical fruits that will transform Mbarara?
Thank you, Hakim. So what we have come up with, or the idea that we are coming up with, is for us to come up with an investment opportunities communique. And this is a document that captures the decisions, the discussions, and everything that has been discussed at the conference. And the intention is to convert the discussion into an action agenda. So we capture the key opportunities identified, we capture the constraints that must be addressed, and the specific commitments made by the relevant stakeholders. And where possible, the commitments will be linked to responsible parties and timelines. So the objective is we don't just leave with speeches and photographs after the conference, but we want a written basis for follow-up and accountability, so that there is value that is actually being registered from these conferences.
Okay, and what does success for you, REDi, what does success really look like for you, like in about 2 months, 3 months, a year, 5 years? What does success look like, if at all? What would you quantify success as shortly following this conference already?
So success can be looked at from 2 different perspectives. There is success from Mbarara City, and for me that would mean visible investment in productive infrastructure, stronger industrial and logistics facilities, better housing, modern healthcare and education infrastructure, well-planned commercial development, and more investable businesses. So that's from the Mbarara City perspective. From the REDi perspective, the REDi Summit Conferences perspective, success for us would mean that opportunities identified through the series have progressed into real projects. And as I said, for Gulu, we've registered and converted some of that pipeline into actual deals for some of the stakeholders that were in there. Financing, also long-term financing being, sort of gain for the developers and whoever requires long-term financing in Mbarara City. Employment creation as well would be a success, a metric that we would measure success for REDi as well. And ultimately, we want secondary cities to be seen not as a distant alternative to Kampala per se, but as a credible investment destination in its own right. And this is what we would like to see for all the other 8 secondary cities that will be visited. I'm
glad that you've already mentioned that you've been to Gulu, and your next destination perhaps could be Hoima. In Hoima, aren't we going late to the party? This is 2026. We expect the commercialization of the Ugandan petroleum sector. One would perhaps think that investment has already followed the petrodollars that have already been invested in the Albertine Graben. Aren't we late to the party?
Not really, Hakim. Not really. There's still a lot to be done. And I think the timing right now for me could not be more relevant because, Hoima, as you know, as you've said, is at the center of Uganda's emerging oil and gas economy, with major investment currently taking place in energy, infrastructure, roads, aviation, Kabalega Airport, logistics,
the industrial park,
the Hoima Stadium. As well. So I think the timing is really right. And also, as we prepare to participate in AFCON 2027. However, infrastructure alone does not necessarily mean that smart cities will be built. And as much as these developments will generate demand for hotels, housing, industrial and logistics facilities, retail, healthcare, etc., as I said, major infrastructure alone will not guarantee a successful city. So REDi Hoima will be looking to ask how the city can convert this period of investment into a diversified, well-planned and sustainable economy that continues to thrive even beyond AFCON and beyond the initial oil development phase, because we know that our oil gains are only going to be for a limited or identifiable number of years. But what happens after that? This is a long-term, visioning for the city, 20, 25, 30, and years and beyond. So we're not just looking at, what is happening right now for the next 5 years, but what the future of Hoima is going to be. So I don't think it's too late because, these are not, we don't have a silver bullet to how the city is going to transform. But we're beginning to vision and create the conversations right now.
All right. For someone that is in Mbarara and beyond, and potential investors, someone that is really, really avid about knowing things that are happening in the Ugandan real estate sector, someone that is really, really knowledgeable, and someone that is willing to add more about the things that they know, what would you want them to take away from the conversation about REDi? And in the run-up to, of course, it's happening on you said on Friday.
Yes. On Friday.
Okay, so what should they look forward to, and how are they able to participate, and what would be their role in ensuring that REDi is a success on Friday?
Yeah, so I think they need to start by the people who are listening and who might have an interest in the conference. I would like them to start recognizing that investment is not limited to major corporations alone. Landowners, entrepreneurs, farmers, professionals, even students all have a role to play in the development of their cities. So it's important that they understand the economic opportunities that are emerging around them. They formalize their business and property interests. They seek credible professional advice and begin building partnerships so that they can participate and be part of the development of their city. So REDi is also an opportunity for them to listen, to contribute, and to connect with people who can help them turn these ideas into viable investments.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is the procedure that they can go through to perhaps be part of this conference?
Well, we'll be live streaming as well, thanks to NBS. So there will be a live stream, but we will be circulating the reports online, so they can access, the Mbarara report that has been written by Knight Frank online. And then we'll also be releasing, outcomes of the conference on various social media channels as well.
Okay. Now moving to the broader discussion about the cities in Uganda. You see, your outlook or the outlook of Knight Frank to Uganda's real estate sector in general, and now the pivot to the trove to the 10 secondary cities looks like this Kampala thing is let us look further. I mean, is it towards the last time I had a conversation with you, you told me, look, in Kampala you're now having plots of land that are having properties, commercial and residential, that are lesser in value in comparison with the land that they are seated on in a city that has a master plan or a big plan that hasn't likely been followed. How are we as a country reimagining the discussion about a capital city and what it would require in the typical Ugandan context? Of course, weaving it in the overriding factor or the underpinning factor for the look at the 10 or 12 secondary cities.
Thank you, Hakim. And that's a very interesting question. I think really now we're at an inflection point right now where we are at a crossroads between, allowing cities to develop haphazardly as they want to, or taking this opportunity to actually plan the development of these cities. And I think Mbarara is a good example of that. The growth is haphazard, it's fragmented, it is not well planned for at all. So I think now is an opportune moment for us to actually sit down, go back and make reference to the NDP for the National Development Plan and the National Physical Development Plans as well, which are still, some of them are still in the framework stages, but they will be moving into the detailed plans. And it's an opportunity for these cities to now really be well planned to create and add value to the land within those cities and within those regions, to avoid the kind of situation that we have in Kampala now, where you have massive slums, unplanned growth in the commuter towns and the secondary cities, in the secondary towns, so that we can really harness the growth and development of the cities to contribute meaningfully to economic growth through well-planned urban centers, creating employment, creating demand for property, housing, offices, retail, well-zoned, and then we'll begin to see a meaningful contribution to the greater economy and the tenfold growth
strategy
government is looking at. Yes.
Certainly. When you read some of the reports that you've put on the website, cover by cover, you'll realize that there is increasingly a growing demand in what one would say commercial real estate arcades, and still the same problem. Okay, what persists in Kampala could not be similar to what happens in the suburbs, that you're seeing that in the areas of Chira, among others, that people are putting up arcades, and maybe those have a higher occupancy rate than the ones that we see in the CBD. And I wanted to know that if someone is really listening in tonight, what would be your 1 or 2 cents to them regarding how they understand investment and profiteering from the Ugandan real estate, leveraging your knowledge?
I think what is tangible and what is a fact is that Kampala is growing rapidly every single day. City limits are being, exceeded every day. Greater Kampala is now, what used to be considered far, has now become very near. And if you look at suburbs in Nakawa Division and beyond, Kira, Wakiso, and you see the amount of growth and development that is taking place there, it is simply a testament to how quickly and how rapidly Kampala is growing. And it is not sustainable. So there is going to be growth along the infrastructure developed axes, along Ginger Road, along the Northern Bypass, along the Southern Expressway, the Entebbe Expressway. If you look at all the major transport nodes and axis points, you will see that there's rapid development that is happening along all those suburbs. And it is not surprising, given our population growth, given our demand for land, for housing, for accommodation. And I think Kampala and Greater Kampala are also going to start, sort of buckling under pressure. And the city limits will keep pushing further out. So therein is an opportunity for growth of, real estate investors in these suburbs and in these regions for different uses, land uses, whether it's office, industrial, retail, particularly housing, because there's an acute shortage of housing, as we know, in this country. So there are a lot of opportunities out there in the real estate sector, but we need to focus on where the effective demand is. There is no point developing where there is no demand. And I would encourage a lot of our developers to consider housing, affordable housing for the population that demand or that need it, outside of the capital city itself and into the commuter towns, because that is where the land is affordable, and with housing comes other spin-offs of demand for retail, for offices and schools, hospitals, you name it. There's a spin-off effect from that comes with the demand for housing.
Certainly, and one would want not to divorce the discussion on housing and the growth of real estate and beyond Greater Kampala Metropolitan to other areas with the discussion on financing, because now the investors are listening to this and saying, wait, okay, now there is an opportunity to grab. Where are we getting the affordable financing for us to be able? Patient, I think that's the word. Patient capital. So some days you approach a bank, gives you a facility, you put up this arcade. By the time you take up the facility and by the time the arcade is finished, to allow for full occupancy, so you can be able to recoup the money from the rental income and then perhaps get to pay back. Are we still having discussions about capital that is sensitive to the unique nature of the Ugandan real estate sector that can perhaps be woven into these discussions?
Actually, the Uganda real estate sector is not really unique as such. And the financing is there, and it is becoming increasingly available. It's just maybe the affordability of it. Yeah. But the financial institutions are not averse to lending to real estate development, but it has to be bankable and it has to be investable. The problem is a lot of the investment projects out there, the development projects out there, have probably not been well planned, well researched, and they haven't been de-risked, for lack of a better word. So very few financial institutions are going to want to, deploy or put money, or even in investment partners for that matter, in a project that is not bankable. So what I would advise investors to do is to start off by getting advice, real estate professional advice, before they even lay a brick or dig a hole in the ground. They must go and do their homework and find out what the highest and best use of that specific plot of land is before they put up that arcade, as you've said. Is there demand for it? Is it in the right location? Are the returns, what are the returns that they're looking for? Is the rental revenue sufficient to cover the facility that they're getting? So the banks are not really averse to lending. They actually have money to deploy, and that's why they're partnering with us in going into these secondary cities. But, and in their defense, if you had the money and you were lending it, you would do the same thing. Because you want to de-risk the investment that you're making into this, or the money that you're lending into these schemes, as much as de-risked as possible. So I think we just need to get into the habit of learning to pay for professional services. Because it costs you less to do that than
not do it at all.
Exactly. And making huge mistakes at the end of it all, and losing your property at the end of the day.
Sure, and financial institutions are not in to lose their money for any reason.
That's not why they're in business.
Let's speak about the unique way through which you're weaving conversations of development of secondary cities in Uganda. The unique way through which you're looking at it and layering it out to ensure that you go city per city in this broader strategy. And what it would actually take for us to cover all the 10 and perhaps have the actionable points for each of those, and then to have this rolled out on perhaps a larger scale, that we can not only have focus, let's now say Gulu, we are done with it, now let's go to Mbarara. What is it going to take for us to have all these points connected, all these dots connected, to perhaps have this running concurrently across all the 10 secondary cities?
So Hakim, this is a long-term initiative.
Okay.
As you know, Knight Frank is into long-term things. We've been in existence for 130 years.
Okay.
Yeah. In Uganda, we've been in existence for 26 years. But as thought leaders and as market leaders, we go beyond selling and leasing houses. We go beyond managing property. And we have to vision for the long term of the real estate sector, of the country, not only of Kampala.
Okay.
Now, it's fortunate and you know, it makes sense that the 10 secondary cities have been zoned and gazetted. So we have started off with Gulu and Mbarara and Hoima this year. Next year we will do another 3, which will be named. And then the year after that, we shall do the last remaining 3. And then in year 4, we'll go back to the ones that we did in year 1. Because as I said, it's a series. And we want to track development, we want to track the commitments that were made, and we want to track progress. That is the only way it's going to become meaningful. Because it's not a short-term gain thing, whereby we're going in, identifying opportunities, doing them quickly. That is not how cities transform, and that is not how you build, you know, cities of the future. It is a long-term play. It's a long game.
Certainly.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily, you know, identifying property opportunities, but creating an enabling environment within that city that will drive the built environment, which will enable continuous growth of the urban centers. So it's senseless for you to go and build a huge shopping mall in the middle of a city that does not even have infrastructure. It just becomes a white elephant. So we don't want to put the cart before the horse. We want to create the environment. We want to participate in the conversations of how these cities are going to develop, with the built environment coming in at a much later stage. But we want to be part of those conversations right now. And that is why we're doing this.
And I want to know, I'm really, really interested in knowing what the discussions from the local authorities, the district physical planning, authority or boards that sit at local government, what lessons did you get from Gulu that you're perhaps carrying to Mbarara? I know these are not towns that are, similar in terms of the infrastructure, in terms of the people, in terms of the opportunities. One could be a gateway to the other side of the north. This one is a gateway to the side of the west. But what are some of the lessons that you're picking, perhaps from the first series, that you're carrying on to this particular one?
So the common thread that is running through, at least for the 2 cities that we've mapped already, is that there is a genuine desire, a recognition, and an appreciation of the fact that there is massive potential in these cities. Number 1. Number 2, they're welcoming the opportunity to get all the stakeholders in one room to have these discussions, because usually people are operating in silos, but they have never had the opportunity to sit down in one room and actually have a shared vision and a shared agenda for the development of their cities. And they do. The local governments want their cities to thrive. They want to increase the revenue collection of their cities. But in some instances, they don't really know how. And I don't blame them, because government write the policy, local government tries to implement it, but they may not necessarily know who the investors are, where they're going to come from. The private investors might not know who to go and talk to about, the city planning or the plans for their city. So this is a really unique and timely initiative that we're putting in place to bring together all the stakeholders in one room to discuss the opportunities and the opportunities and the pipeline that they can create for their cities to develop. But the common thread is that the desire is there, the need is there to grow these cities, to grow the revenue of their cities, and to create economic growth and activity and investment of their cities.
I'm really, really glad that you've connected for us the dots in terms of what the economic growth in that particular district or that particular local government really means in terms of the collection of domestic revenues from those particular ones, because we're looking at the performance reports of some local governments, and you're looking at a local government that has a population of about 300,000 people that can barely raise 2 billion shillings in local revenue, and they're always waiting for government to also be able to extend the basket of public service goods.
And to add on to that, Hakim, you see, we cannot add value in Kampala alone. We cannot bring produce, products, services, out of the secondary cities into Kampala. There is no need for that. We can transform those cities and create value, do value addition in those cities. And that is what we're really trying to say. Make yourself self-sustainable so that not everything has got to come to Kampala for there to be value.
Certainly.
Yes.
So it needs to be done right there.
Create the employment, create the urban centers, create the manufacturing, build up your own economic activity.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would be your call to the people out there? I know for a fact that someone is really interested in being part of this, either as a sponsor, either as a participant. What would be your call to the people that you certainly moved this journey with, the people that have been part and parcel of this discussion? What would be your call to them in the run-up to Friday when REDi will be happening in Mbarara?
First of all, I'm really grateful to our sponsors, and I'm extremely indebted to them and grateful for the fact that they caught the vision, and they were able to come and partner with us in this initiative that we are currently undertaking. It's something that I think can only be appreciated by long-term thinkers, because whoever is putting their buck in there are looking for a quick return. The return on investment has got to be pretty much immediate. So I really thank them for having a long-term vision and catching it and walking it with us, because I think it's up to all of us to develop our cities and eventually our country. But it's also a responsibility of Knight Frank as thought leaders to be part of those conversations on how these cities are going to develop, instead of coming in later, when perhaps things
have gone
could have
wrong.
Been done better. Cities could have been developed better. Our professional advice could have been sought by the people in these secondary cities, some of whom might not know who we are. So it's also us availing ourselves to the communities in the secondary cities, to the stakeholders, and saying, we're here to help you connect the dots. We're here to help you and to give you professional advice as to how to go about your real estate developments and investments so that they are bankable for the banks to finance. And when the banks finance them, there's revenue that is accruing from those properties, which is adding on to the collections and the revenues of the cities, and so on and so forth. And it continues.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? And that is how you create wealth. That is how you create urban centers, economic activity, development, investment. And maybe we can then reach our 10x growth.
Tenfold growth. Certainly, I couldn't agree more. And just in case someone was not listening to this, or just in case someone is to forget anything that has been said on this show, just tell me the one thing that they shouldn't be able to forget, and move with their heads high ahead of Friday as we wait for the REDi conference in Mbarara.
I would say there are opportunities for us to partner with any private sector organizations and institutions out there who, think that they have an interest in participating in the REDi conference series. As I said, we will be doing Hoima next, and then next year we'll be doing another 3. So they're very welcome to reach out to me and find out how we can partner together. But I think it's all our responsibilities to really take a keen interest in the development of our countries, of our cities, and eventually of our country. There's no point being a naysayer and sitting there and criticizing and folding our hands and
saying, you see, the city is wrong.
Exactly.
We are not developing.
Absolutely.
What are you doing about it?
Absolutely. And the built environment is to the benefit of everybody. So we have the expertise, we have the know-how, and the experience to advise on these investments and to advise local government on how they should vision for these cities as well as a partnership.
Okay.
So yeah.
What should go into the preparation? What should I come with if I'm ready for the conference and the venue, the time? What should I come with?
Please come with yourself to Igongo Country Resort in Biharwe. It starts at 7:30 on Friday. This is for paid members who have registered, and it's not too late. If you want to, you can register your interest on our website. And yeah, from 7:30, and we should be closing at about 6:30 in the evening with a networking cocktail and an opportunity to, really interact with everybody in the room and get away with some opportunities.
Certainly. So come ready to talk business.
Yeah.
And as for government, what has been for local government at that level? What has been the level of engagement and the level of interest in such a discussion?
It has actually been excellent, and I must commend them for their open-mindedness and their interest in the initiative, starting from Gulu, the Lord Mayor of Gulu, Mr. Julius Achire, and now moving into Mbarara. There've been a few changes there, but they have been very open. They've been very supportive in helping us with the research. National Planning Authority has been excellent. Ministry of Lands, Housing. In fact, one of our panelists is the Commissioner for Housing, Dave Kayangayanga, is also coming. He'll be one of the panelists there. Mr. James Enyimu, Commissioner of MOFPED, Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning. He will be giving a keynote address. So I would say the government agencies have been extremely supportive in this initiative. And those are the kind of interactions and partnerships that we need to keep encouraging so that we can, win in visioning for the cities of the future. It's a partnership. We cannot work in silos.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you
and no single institution can transform a city. Like
sure,
I said. So
it
we
must
all need
be.
to work. It has to be a collaboration.
Certainly. Your one word to the people that are imagining, and some of them exhausted, some others really stressed about the mess that Kampala has turned out to be. What would be your one and what would you tell them, and as they try to look for possible alternatives?
Well, the alternatives are there in the secondary cities, in the greater, other commuter towns outside of Kampala. But let us also try to be the change that we want to see. Okay. Yeah, one way or another. Let's try and be the change that we want to see.
Okay. I've been listening and following the trends in terms of the warnings that have been given to the El Nino floods that are expected, or rains that are really expected, and I was really worried and saying, okay, here we are, we will be at it again, and what would it come, and what would it really call for in terms of because we have a city authority and a fully fledged department or directorate. What would be your one or two words of advice to them as we move forward towards what we've been warned about?
Look, of course, there's a lot of work to be done with regards to the infrastructure improvement, and a lot of the infrastructure that we're sitting on is quite old. It was built very many years ago to cater for a much smaller population. That population has more than
doubled,
grown 10x. So there is quite a lot of rehabilitation and requirement for new infrastructure to be put in place, and as there's some of it taking place right now. We've seen that the road networks have been phenomenal. They've opened up the suburbs. The drainage system is being worked on, albeit in a fragmented manner, but it's being worked on nonetheless. But I think we can also help ourselves. If we are blocking drainage because we're throwing rubbish anyhow and not collecting it in one place for it to be disposed of, these are some of the things that we can try as individuals to alleviate that problem to a certain extent. But also if the other entities like NEMA would the planning authorities would be a bit more be more proactive in enforcement of our planning policies, and I know that they're trying to do this. National Building Regulations Board, but if we could stop building in wetlands, if we could stop building on road reserves, if we could stop blocking drainage in the name of modern development, and things like this, I think we would also alleviate the flooding situation to a large extent. But I think there is not, I don't see the will there to try and curb some of these illegal developments, where the rules
are flouted in ways.
And they're not, they're not applying to everybody equally.
And I think it's I
to be
think it's
politically correct.
really, I think it's a very, very huge problem, and I've seen it. And like they say, one word to a wise man is always enough. Dear awesome listener, you just got yourself a free consultancy and free advice from the best real estate professional that I know in the country. So right there you have it. So Friday, come to Igongo Culture Center in Biharwe to be able to catch the REDi conference. There will be all sorts of professionals. There will be the developers. There will be local government. The Minister of Finance, Planning and Economic Development will as well be here, but Nai Frank will be spearheading this particular conference to ensure that Mbarara goes to the next level, and to ensure that all the other secondary cities as mapped out go to the next level. Thanks a lot, Judy. It's always a pleasure having you, and we always feed from your palm of knowledge. So from me and the entire team, I want to say thank you so much for listening to the Big Talk on 106.